Welcome to County Board Wrap-Up, where we take a closer look at the big issues from this month's County Board meeting. I'm your host, Kara O'Donnell, and we will be joined, as always, by County Board Chair Matt DeFerranti, as well as Board Member Takis Karantonis. Lots to discuss from this month's meeting, but first, here's your 60-second Board Wrap-Up. The county manager presented his proposals for federal funds from the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, as well as priorities for using closeout funds. And then the board offered its guidance for the manager on priorities and needs for the fiscal year 2023 budget. The board also heard about legislative priorities for the upcoming session, including everything from sustainability efforts and mental health to transit priorities, noise ordinances, and the proposed continued virtual options for public meeting participation. The board approved 13 so-called slow zones as a pilot program where residential areas near schools will see reduced speed limits. It's all part of Vision Zero objectives. Several loans relating to affordable housing were approved, and the board also approved flexibility when it comes to ground floor retail and commercial space along Columbia Pike. You can find details on these and other actions from this month's board meeting by visiting arlingtonva.us and searching County Board. And that's your 60-second board wrap-up. When we come back, we'll be joined by Board Chair Matt DeFerranti as well as Board Member Takis Karantonis for a look at the big story from the October board meeting. And that's a look at budget guidance as well as how the county proposes to use federal ARPA funds. Stay with us. Welcome back to County Board Wrap-Up and this month's big story, which is the board's budget guidance and how to use those federal rescue plan funds. I'm joined now by Board Chair Matt DeFerranti as well as Board Member Takis Karantonis. Thank you both for being here today. Now, the manager presented his recommendations for using the federal ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act funds. What did you think of those proposals, and what are some of your thoughts, both of you, on the priorities we should be looking at with those funds?
Sure. So I was really pleased with the draft, the manager's cut at the American Rescue Plan funding. And I'm really pleased that we'll now have a month to think through those recommendations. A lot of them touched on priorities that I've heard board members each identify that have come from the community. And we're able to, we have a little more room now than we did earlier in the year. We initially allocated, we had $19 million in American Rescue Plan funds just for the COVID response, focused there. And we've been able to pare that down a little bit to $6 million that we have available in that American Rescue Plan bucket of funding. And we have a lot of priorities. There's a pent-up desire to invest in our community. But it is nice, we still have the needs with COVID, but we have a little more room. And so we're all eager to work on those recommendations with respect to that bucket of funding that the manager put forward over the coming month. We'll hear from our community, and then in November we'll make some more decisions about where we allocate and what we're going to do with that American Rescue Plan funding. We got a lot of other pieces to the budget picture, and I know a shared priority of both of ours, Takis, is how we can make sure we're equitable in what we do, and how we will also have to look at closeout funding and then our 2023 funding. So I know there's a lot of different priorities, and I don't know if there's some that stand out for you.
I mean, the one salient piece of the conversation right now is that the county manager's proposal and the board's approval of it is structured in 4 priority areas, right? Mm-hmm. One is housing assistance, the other is community recovery, the other is equity in disadvantaged neighborhoods, and transit and transportation. So within these buckets, I think that these are kind of the four pieces of a priority framework within this conversation is happening right now. I would say that we still have pieces that we know from before, like eviction prevention, like but we also have new things. Like, for example, we promote a condition assessment for all our affordable housing units. We invest something in tenant landlord dispute resolution. We We have not forgotten that we have to support small businesses and the business loans program that does that. We care about workforce development. And then we have, an important piece was the expansion of the Crisis Intervention Center, which is a major public health response of our county. Food insecurity, childcare was a big discussion, and I think our colleague Ms. Crystal has brought some, creative thinking forward for this. Homeless services, digital equity, other critical community needs. Something that was also new in the proposal was fare reductions for students, who we would like to entice to ride public transportation, the art buses, the art system, and of course, also fare reductions for those members of our community who are on low and moderate income, and we want to bring back as riders in our public transportation system.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the board also gave its own guidance to the manager of here's what we would like to see you focus on for the fiscal year 23 budget. What was on your wish list?
Well, we stayed the course on the health and safety issues that have to continue to be our priority. For the first time, I've seen a couple of reports. Delta is coming down, but we know that more variants are possible. So health and safety and a lot of the priorities that Takis mentioned, eviction prevention, continue to be in our budget guidance for the budget that starts next July. But we also took a pretty unusual step of putting into our guidance that we will make some investments in our greatest resource, which is our county employees. And so we committed to at least 4.25% in merit pay increases for all of our employees and at least 6.5% for our public safety employees starting next July. And so that is, I've not heard that that's been done in the county board's budget for the last decade. Even before that, I've not heard that that's been done. But we feel it's so important to recognize and keep and value our employees, because they are the lifeblood of the county's services to our residents. And so that was a key piece to the guidance. And we also took a couple of other steps in the shorter term that are pretty important that I know, Takis, you and I both supported with respect to investing in all our employees come January 1st.
Well, absolutely. And we have seen during the pandemic how important and critical it is to have first-class services in Arlington County, and how this is really the bang for the taxpayers' buck. And we know that after one of the major lessons learned is that we have to care about our public employees in order to get this amazing response and result for taxpayers. We have been very careful during the last couple of years. The pandemic alone has brought a lot of uncertainty, economic uncertainty. But now that we have more of a predictable economic outlook, that doesn't mean that the economic outlook is brilliant or better. It's actually flat, but it's more predictable, less risky. We can address these issues with more assertiveness, and we do. Mm-hmm. So the guidance to the county manager is that. That said, that doesn't mean that everything else is less important. It's just a continuation of the guidance that we have been giving so far, and very consistent with the guidance that we gave also on the ARPA funding. So housing and social services and stormwater response and environmental, a decisive turn towards focusing on environmental improvements and reducing our carbon footprint and responding to the climate crisis. All this is included in the guidance, and I think that this is a good document for county leadership, administrative leadership to start working on a budget for the fiscal year 23, which this year, Mr. Chair, I have to say congratulations that we started it earlier, so we have more time to work with the community on it.
That's right, that's right. And you mentioned, Takis, the climate change and sustainability issues. You both have used the phrase a whole of government approach to facing climate change. Tell me a little bit of what you mean by that. I know that's a real hot button issue for many of our community members.
Well, we're seeing nationally that it's the number of people impacted by climate-related events percentage has just gone way up. There's estimates that 2/3 to 4/5 of Americans, they themselves will be impacted by a climate event. So we have to take steps to focus our work. So that means essentially the county manager and the executive leadership team, as well as down through to the Department of Environmental Services, all have to be thinking, how can we make strategic decisions to reach our 2025 and 2035 goals? So at the top levels, but in each of the decisions, so we've taken some steps on electric vehicles, we have to take steps on buildings, we're taking steps on buses, electric buses, but essentially we are trying to build in that sustainability to every level of our decision making and our budget in particular. And so we're excited about that. We also are determined, because this is a big challenge, even though we've been leaders on our environment for a long time, the time by which we need to make systemic change with respect to climate is so short that we have to work with urgency, and that's we try to put that urgency into our decision-making processes throughout the organization.
Okay. Well, and of course, there was plenty more to discuss from this month's board meeting, and that is where we are turning to you, our viewers. We will answer your questions after the board meeting when we come right back. Welcome back to County Board Wrap Up. I'm Kara O'Donnell, and I'm here with County Board Chair Matt DiFerranti, as well as Board Member Takis Karantonis. Now, this is the segment where we open things up to you, our viewers, by taking your questions submitted via email. And of course, if you have questions for us on the actions of the board meeting, just email us at countyboardwrap@arlingtonva.us, and we will get to as many of those questions as we can in each month's show. So we'll start off. We had a question with how the board approved the so-called slow zones in certain areas throughout the county. And our question came in asking how those specific zones were chosen and what larger goal do we hope this attains?
First of all, we are really excited to test a new level of traffic calming and a new level of providing more pedestrian safety on our streets and around. And that's the major criteria around schools in this sense. So these are 13 locations. They're all schools, basically. There are 11 public schools and 2 private schools. And this is an excellent place to start a program like that, to collect data, collect experience, and see how we can, how much of an additional safety this actually provides. I'm pretty confident that all results and all experience out of this program will be very positive and will encourage us to look at more locations where we have the pedestrian traffic that we want to protect, the pedestrians that we want to protect. It's part of our Vision Zero work, and I think that this is a new level of also including drivers to understand that, the safety on the street is a collaborative product of everybody working together.
I think it's so important. I know that we all get in a rush sometimes, but think about how critical it is when you think about your kids or your neighbor's kids who are 5 to 11, how desperately we want the vaccine for them. It's also just a moment, if you're going too quickly in a school zone, that can have lifetime repercussions for you and a child. And so we all have to remember, myself included, to just slow down in these zones. And so this is a great way of making sure we do.
And it takes the speed limit from 25 to 20, correct? Just to be
Yep.
clear. And we'll
Which
see
is
how
a
this
significant decrease.
And we'll see what kind of data we find from this study and take it from there, correct?
Yeah, the national, international experience with that is extremely positive. It really reduces the risk of crashes and fatal injuries it makes life for everybody better, for the kids, for the drivers, for the neighborhood, for the schools. So that's a win-win-win-win.
Sure, definitely. Now, the board also approved loans for a variety of affordable housing projects throughout the county. We've talked about those projects in length in earlier episodes of this program, but what are we seeing with most of the affordable housing stock in this county, and what will the loans approved at this month's meeting, how will that assist those projects?
Well, one of the projects is Ballston Station, where we approved $19 million in funding. This is right next to a metro. It is, as our last few major projects have been, many of them have been northern part of the county. And so this moves along that project. We are closer to breaking ground on that project, and it's a huge step forward. The same is true. We also put $6 million into Park Shirlington, which we needed to invest in. So this is a sort of regular investment. We're not quite at breaking ground with those two and the third project, but it is the sort of part of the wheels moving forward expeditiously so that we can try and address housing. And big picture, we need more units because Arlington continues to be a great place to live. So some of our market rate affordable units have been replaced, continue to be replaced. And so we need to invest in those committed affordable units. And so that's a piece of what we need to do. There's also some units where we need to refurbish because units built in 1950 reached the end of their life. So we're recognizing that as an additional priority that we really seen through the course of the pandemic as we try to serve our residents in need well.
And then finally, this is the time of year we start talking about priorities for the upcoming legislative session. But we had a question come in of just asking for some explanation of what is this priority package and how does it get submitted to the legislature? What does this mean as opposed to our own priorities as a county with our budgeting system?
Well, it's a good question. Many residents don't think first about which level of government is doing what.
Right.
They just want government to serve and serve them well. And so it is the case that we have a lot of things that the county does, but in Virginia, the state has a lot of authority as well. In fact, the Dillon rule is much discussed, and it means that we can, as a county, only do things within certain prescribed limits. We have been wanting to expand what we are able to do, and our legislative packages, our recommendations to our delegates and senators for what we want them to push on and want them to pass as far as legislation. We have accomplished quite a few of those priorities in the last couple of years, and there's much more discussion. Arlington residents love to have thoughts on this, and we appreciate that. It's also the case that we discussed this at our board meeting. We'll also have a session on November 9th, but I know that which will be with our delegation. And so there's a lot that we want to get done, a lot that we have gotten done, but more in areas like the environment, housing, number of other areas that are big priorities.
Absolutely. And the state does not only have regulatory authority or legislative authority, it also has economic importance for our region when we talk about funding for metro or funding for the VRE system. So these all flows into this on our legislative priorities because they affect us directly, and we want to make sure that for example, transportation infrastructure, regional and interregional transportation infrastructure is funded. It's also the package comes together in a process where commissions are asked. We make all the time notes what would be an appropriate item for consideration down in Richmond, and all this comes together by this time of the year, and we put it on the table with our elected delegation in the General Assembly, and we figure out how, and when will be up for consideration.
Yeah. And I think I should add that we have to be smart about this in the sense that the package stays mostly the same, but the results of the upcoming elections on November 2nd are a key piece of this. Yes. We want to be smart depending on the outcome. And for our residents, I just think it's relevant to say, There's early voting now. No matter what you choose, make sure your voice is heard. And you can vote early, you can vote on November 2nd, Election Day, but once we know the results of those elections, we'll tailor and edit and calibrate our legislative package with our delegation as we seek to move forward as a community.
Okay, great. Well, we will end on that note, and that will take us to the close of another episode of County Board Wrap-Up. Remember, if you have questions for us after a board meeting, let us know. Contact us on social media or email us at countyboardwrap@arlingtonva.us about an issue that's important to you, and we'll try to answer your questions here. And remember, you can always find out about the topics and more by visiting the County Board website at arlingtonva.us and search County Board. Be sure to join us next month for the very latest on the important board actions and more. I'm Kara O'Donnell. We'll see you then.